Hanul Kim was a name whispered through the alleys of Seoul, the kind of man whose glance could silence a room. Cold, calculating, and dangerously untouchable, he ruled the underworld with precision. But 6 years ago, one night had broken through the walls around his heart. It was in Busan during a storm that raged against the sea. He'd been wounded after a violent gang encounter and had taken refuge in a small coastal inn. That's where he met Amara, a young African medical volunteer who worked in a nearby clinic. She had found him bleeding in the rain, half conscious, his gun slipping from his hand. She didn't know who he was then. He didn't care what danger followed him that night. For the first time, Hanul felt warmth in a world that had only ever known blood and loyalty. She patched his wounds, scolded him softly for not going to a hospital, and stayed until dawn. One night, one kiss, one memory that haunted him for years. By morning, she was gone. No note, no trace, only the ghost of her smile and the scent of rain. Hanul stood in front of his glass tower office, looking down at the city he owned, emotionless as always. The Mafia empire had grown stronger. Rivals bowed before his shadow. But sometimes, late at night, he'd pour himself a drink and remember her laughter, until fate decided to bring her back. That afternoon, his right-hand man announced a visitor. A lady from overseas. She says it's urgent. Hanul's brows furrowed. He rarely allowed strangers, but something about the tone in his man's voice made him pause. Send her in, he ordered. The door opened, and his world stopped. Amara walked in, dressed in a simple white blouse and jeans, her beauty still effortless, her presence disarming. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a small boy around 5 years old, his black hair slightly curled, his skin a perfect blend of hers and his. The boy's eyes were Hanul's, sharp, deep, and storm gray. Hanul's heart faltered. For a man who'd killed without hesitation, nothing had ever felt as terrifying as this moment. Hanul! She spoke softly, her voice trembling. We need to talk. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't decide whether to reach for her or for the child. The boy clutched her hand and looked up at him curiously. Mommy, is he the man from the picture? Hanul's throat tightened. Picture? Amara nodded gently. Yes, baby. That's Hanul. Silence hung heavy between them, broken only by the boy's small voice. Do you know how to make paper boats like Mommy said you used to? Hanul almost smiled. He didn't remember ever mentioning it, but she must have told their son stories. Stories of a man who never truly left her heart. When Amara finally met his gaze again, her eyes glistened. I didn't come for money, Hanul. I came because he deserves to know where he comes from. And because, she hesitated, her voice breaking, because I couldn't stop thinking about you. For the first time in years, Hanul's iron mask cracked. He stood up slowly, walking toward them. Each step felt like walking through years of regret. He stopped before the boy, knelt down, and placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. What's your name? He asked quietly. Min, the boy said shyly. Min Kim. The name hit Hanul like a thunderclap. She had given him his surname. He looked up at Amara, emotion clouding his gaze. You gave him my name. Her eyes softened. He asked for it, said it made him feel brave. Something inside him shattered completely. Hanul reached out, his cold fingers brushing the boy's hair. Then he looked back at Amara. You came back, he whispered, as though afraid she'd vanish again. Amara smiled faintly, tears tracing down her cheeks. I never really left. He didn't pull her into his arms. Not yet. But the air between them burned with every word unsaid. And for the first time in 6 years, Seoul's most ruthless mafia felt alive again. Hanul couldn't stop staring at her. 6 years of silence had not dulled her beauty. It had only made it more dangerous to his heart. Amara sat across from him in his private penthouse suite, the boy asleep on the couch beside her. The night city lights bathed her in a warm golden glow, her skin radiant, her eyes deep and unreadable. He had cleared the room of all his men. For once, the mafia boss sat not as the most feared man in Seoul, but as a man struggling to breathe in the presence of the only woman who ever made him feel human. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked, his voice low but sharp, like the calm before thunder. Amara looked down, her fingers nervously twisting the silver bracelet on her wrist. "I wanted to, but I didn't know how. You disappeared. Hanul. No calls. No messages. I thought you didn't want to be found." He exhaled, leaning back, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I was protecting you. The people I deal with, they destroy everything I touch." Her gaze softened. "You're still protecting me, aren't you?" He looked at her. Really looked at her. The same woman who had faced his bleeding body with nothing but courage. She hadn't changed, but he had. "Always," he whispered. For the next few days, Amara and her son stayed at his estate, a modern fortress on the edge of Seoul. Hanul had ordered every guard to treat them like royalty. Each morning, he watched from the balcony as Min ran through the garden chasing butterflies, his laughter echoing through walls that had only ever heard silence and gunfire. It was strange, this feeling of peace. Unfamiliar, dangerous, and Amara, she was the center of it all. One evening, he found her in the kitchen, cooking. No one had ever dared to enter his kitchen. The Mafia boss who dined on 5-star meals was now staring, almost mesmerized, at the woman stirring soup barefoot, humming softly. "You're not supposed to be doing that," he said, his voice low and teasing. Amara glanced over her shoulder, smiling. "And you're not supposed to be watching." He stepped closer, his tone soft but deliberate. "I haven't seen someone smile in this house for years. Don't stop now." Her cheeks flushed slightly as she looked up at him. "You sound like a man who's forgotten how to smile." "Maybe," he murmured, eyes never leaving hers. "You could remind me." For a moment, the world stopped again. Just the two of them, the warmth of the stove between them, and a tension so thick it felt electric. Hanul reached out, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. She froze, heart pounding. His hand lingered near her cheek, his voice a whisper. "You don't belong in my world, Amara." "Maybe not," she breathed, looking into his eyes. "But I belong with you." He swallowed hard. His heart, the one he thought long dead, ached at her words. Later that night, when Min had gone to bed, they found themselves on the balcony again. The city stretched endlessly below, neon lights reflecting in her eyes. Hanul handed her a glass of wine. Their fingers brushed, briefly, yet enough to spark something dangerous. "I used to watch the sky and think about you," he said quietly, "wondering if I'd dreamed you." She smiled sadly. "I used to tell Min that his father was watching over him from somewhere far away. I didn't know how true that was." He turned to face her, eyes dark with longing. "You kept me alive in ways you'll never understand." Amara's heart stuttered. His tone wasn't that of a cold killer. It was of a man confessing what he'd buried too deep for too long. And then he stepped closer. So close she could feel the heat of him, smell the faint cologne mixed with danger and memory. "Hanul," she whispered. He looked down at her lips. "Tell me to stop." But she didn't, because she couldn't. When his lips finally met hers, it was slow, deliberate, like he was claiming something he'd been denied for years. Her hands slid to his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath the scars. The kiss deepened, gentle yet desperate, passion burning beneath layers of pain and regret. When they finally pulled away, her forehead rested against his. "You shouldn't have come back," he whispered, his breath unsteady. "I didn't have a choice," she said softly. "My heart never left." And in that moment, the ruthless Mafia king, feared by all, felt his soul unravel in her arms. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Hanul's penthouse, golden and gentle, a warmth he wasn't used to. For the first time in years, the house wasn't silent. It was alive. The faint laughter of Min echoed down the hallway as Amara helped him with breakfast, her voice soft and melodic. Hanul stood by the doorway, watching them. He should have been at a meeting handling territory disputes or money transfers. But he couldn't move. He was mesmerized. Min was sitting at the counter, trying to pour milk into a bowl, spilling half of it. Amara chuckled, wiping it with a napkin. "You're just like your father," she teased gently, "always making a mess and pretending it's art." Hanul smirked from where he stood. "I heard that." Amara turned, her smile lighting up the room in a way that made his chest tighten. "Good. Maybe you'll learn some humility." He walked toward her slowly, his voice low. "Humility isn't something people survive in my world, Amara." Her eyes softened. "Maybe it's time you learn to live, not just survive." For a moment he couldn't speak. She had no idea how deeply her words cut through the cold armor he'd worn all these years. That night he couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, the city lights reflecting off the whiskey glass in his hand. Amara's laughter still lingered in his mind. But beneath it, danger stirred. A call came in urgent. "Boss!" His lieutenant's voice came through. "The Osaka Syndicate wants to renegotiate territory. They've found out about the woman and the boy." Hanul's jaw clenched. "How?" "They have eyes everywhere, sir. They say weakness is expensive." Weakness. The word burned through him. He'd ruled by fear, by being untouchable. Now, Amara and Min had given him something precious, and that made him vulnerable. He hung up and poured another drink, his mind spinning. He wanted to protect them. But how could he do that while living in the shadows of war? The next day, he took Amara and Min to a hidden villa outside Seoul. Mountains surrounded the property, the air pure and quiet. Amara looked around in awe. "It's beautiful, Hanul. But why bring us here?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Because this is the only place they'll never find you." Her eyes widened. "Who? What are you talking about?" He walked closer, his voice low, serious. "The people I deal with, they know about you now. About him. They'll use you to get to me." Amara took a step forward, her tone trembling. "So you're just hiding us away?" "It's for your safety," he said firmly. She shook her head, tears glistening. "You can't protect us by pushing us away, Hanul. That's not love, that's fear." His heart twisted painfully. "You think I'm afraid?" "Yes," she whispered. "You're terrified of losing us. And that's the first time you've ever been truly human." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he stepped closer, until their breaths mingled. "I would burn this entire world to keep you safe," he murmured. "Even if it means standing in the fire myself." Her hand reached for his, their fingers locking. "Then don't stand alone anymore." That night, under a sky heavy with stars, Hanul stood at the balcony of the villa, Amara by his side. Min had long fallen asleep in the next room, dreaming peacefully. Amara leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Do you ever wish you could start over?" she asked softly. He looked down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Every night since you left." "Then maybe this is your second chance," she said, eyes glimmering with hope. He tilted her chin up gently, his gaze burning with something deeper than desire. It was need, devotion, guilt, love. "I don't deserve it," he whispered. "Maybe not," she smiled faintly. "But you deserve to try." And when he kissed her again, it wasn't out of hunger or regret. It was slow, full of promise, full of the warmth he'd forgotten existed. The ruthless Korean Mafia boss was gone for that moment. In his place was a man who had finally found a reason to live. The morning mist curled over the villa like silk, the air still carrying the faint scent of rain. Amara woke first, her skin warm beneath the soft white sheets. The room was quiet, except for the rhythmic sound of the ocean in the distance and the deep, steady breathing beside her. Hanul lay next to her, shirtless, the early light brushing against his scars. Marks of the life he'd led, the wars he'd fought, and the demons he'd survived. But now, sleeping beside her, he didn't look like the ruthless Mafia king of Seoul. He looked human, peaceful, hers. Amara smiled faintly, tracing her fingers along his chest. He stirred, his hand catching hers gently before she could pull away. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice still rough with sleep. "Good morning," she whispered, her heart fluttering. "I didn't mean to wake you." He turned to face her, eyes half open, gray and soft. You could never wake me in a bad way. She laughed quietly. You say that now. He smirked, leaning closer until his forehead brushed hers. I mean it. Their lips met in a slow, lingering kiss, one that spoke of all the years lost, the words unsaid, the ache of waiting. His touch was gentle, reverent, as though afraid she might disappear if he held her too tightly. When they finally pulled apart, Amara's voice trembled with emotion. You don't have to pretend to be strong all the time, Hanul. His eyes searched hers. If I stop pretending, the world will eat me alive. She smiled softly. Then let me be your peace when the world is in chaos. He stared at her, his breath catching. You already are. Later that day, they walked along the hidden garden path behind the villa. Min ran ahead, chasing dragonflies and shouting with laughter. The sight made Hanul's chest ache in a way he couldn't explain. He has your spirit, Hanul said quietly. Amara smiled, watching their son. And your eyes. Every time I look at him, I see you. He took her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. You raised him well. Alone. It wasn't easy, she admitted softly. But I never wanted him to grow up hating a man he never met. So I told him stories about a brave man who once protected me in the rain. His eyes softened. You made me sound better than I am. No, she said gently. I told him the truth, that even the coldest man can still have warmth buried deep inside. Hanul stopped walking and turned to her. The wind brushed through her curls, the scent of flowers wrapping around them. You make me want to be that man again, he said. Amara's heart fluttered. Then be him, not for me, for yourself. He leaned in, his hand resting against her waist, his voice low and tender. You think it's that simple? It is, she whispered. Love always is. And then he kissed her again. This time under the soft sunlight, with Min's laughter in the distance, and the promise of something pure blooming between them. That evening, they sat together on the balcony. A blanket draped over their shoulders as the sky turned crimson. Min was asleep again, the world quiet. Hanul's arm was around her, fingers tracing idle circles on her skin. Do you ever think about what could have happened if we never met that night? He asked. Amara smiled faintly. Maybe I'd still be in Africa, living a simple life, but I would have always wondered what it felt like to love someone like you. He tilted his head. Someone like me? A man who hides his heart behind a kingdom of fear, she said softly. But deep down, he just wanted someone to see him for who he is, not what he's done. He exhaled slowly, the words cutting deep. You see too much. That's because I love too deeply, she whispered. His heart stuttered. The word love, something he hadn't let himself believe he could have, felt almost sacred on her lips. Say it again, he murmured, his voice breaking. She smiled, cupping his face. I love you, Hanul. He closed his eyes, pulling her close, his lips finding hers again. Softly at first, then deeper, like a man starved of warmth for too long. The world around them disappeared, the danger, the empire, the enemies. In that moment, there was only her, only them. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. I don't deserve your love, he whispered. Maybe not, she breathed, smiling through her tears. But you have it anyway, and beneath the soul stars, the ruthless Mafia found something he'd never conquered. A love that made him feel alive. The night had fallen heavy over the mountains. The villa bathed in silver moonlight. Inside, all was still, except for the quiet rhythm of two hearts learning to beat in the same time again. Hanul stood by the window, watching the stars disappear behind drifting clouds. He had lived his life in the dark, among power, blood, and fear. Yet, for the first time, he wanted light. He wanted her. Behind him, Amara stirred awake, her voice soft and sleepy. You're awake again, she murmured, sitting up, the sheets slipping from her shoulders. He turned, his eyes gentle. Old habits. She smiled faintly. You used to fight sleep because of nightmares. What haunts you now? He hesitated, walking back to her, his hand brushing a lock of hair from her face. The thought of losing what I never thought I could have. Amara's eyes shimmered in the low light. You won't lose me, Hanul. Not again. He sat beside her, silent for a moment, then cupped her face. His thumb grazed her cheek, tender and reverent. Do you know what you did to me, Amara? He whispered. You walked into my life once, healed a wound in my body, and left a wound in my soul that never closed. Her breath hitched. And now, he leaned closer, his lips barely brushing hers. Now you've come back to heal that too. Their lips met in a kiss that carried the ache of years, the sweetness of rediscovery, and the quiet desperation of two souls who had been apart for too long. The world outside faded. Only their heartbeat remained. He kissed her deeper, slow, consuming. His hands tracing the path of her back, memorizing her all over again. She melted into him, her fingers tangled in his hair, whispering his name like a prayer. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. I never knew peace could feel like this, he murmured. She smiled, her voice barely a whisper. It's because you never stopped fighting, even when you thought you did. He kissed her again, softer this time, like gratitude. The next morning, Amara woke to find him outside with Min, teaching the little boy how to fly a paper kite. The sight made her heart swell. Hanul, the man feared by thousands, laughed softly as Min's small hands struggled to hold the string steady. Higher, Daddy! Higher! Min shouted, his joy echoing across the courtyard. Hanul's lips curved into a rare, unguarded smile. Then hold tight, champ. The wind only listens to those who believe. Amara leaned against the doorway, tears stinging her eyes. It was a moment she had dreamed of for 6 years. The man she loved, the son she raised alone, together like they were always meant to be. When Hanul noticed her watching, he walked toward her, the boy still tugging at his hand. You're awake, he said softly. Breakfast is ready. Min cooked. She laughed, looking at their flour-covered hands. You two look dangerous in the kitchen. More dangerous than I ever was with a gun, he teased, making her blush. Later, after Min had gone to nap, Hanul found her by the garden pond, dipping her feet in the cool water. The sunlight danced on her skin, her laughter floating like music through the quiet air. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. You look too beautiful to be real, he whispered. Amara smiled, leaning into him. And you look too gentle to be feared. He chuckled slowly. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation. She turned her head slightly, her lips brushing his cheek. Your secret's safe with me. He kissed the corner of her mouth, his breath warm. You've changed me, Amara. How so? She asked softly. I used to think love was a weakness, he said. Now I know it's the only thing strong enough to make a man like me want to live. Her eyes glistened. Then live, Hanul. Live for us. He kissed her again, deeply, passionately, his hands pulling her closer as if he could keep her there forever. The world melted away until there was only the sound of the wind and the quiet rhythm of two hearts becoming one. That night, after dinner, they danced in the living room with no music. Hanul held her close, his hand at her back, her head against his chest. I never learned how to dance, he admitted. You're doing fine, she whispered, smiling. He looked down at her, his voice husky. You make even silence feel like a song. And in the soft glow of candlelight, they swayed, two broken souls mended by love. For the first time, Hanul didn't feel like a man running from the shadows. He felt like a man finally stepping into the light, with the woman who had brought him back to life. The peace couldn't last forever. In Hanul's world, peace was borrowed time, something fragile and fleeting, like sunlight. It began with a phone call. He had been sitting with Amara and Min in the garden, watching their son chase fireflies, his laughter echoing against the twilight. Hanul's phone buzzed on the table beside him. One glance at the screen made his jaw tighten. He answered without a word. Boss. His lieutenant's voice came through, breathless, urgent. We've been compromised. Someone leaked your location. The Osaka syndicate knows where you are. Hanul's blood ran cold. His eyes instinctively went to Amara and Min. They were laughing together, completely unaware that danger was already on its way. How much time do we have? Hanul asked quietly. Maybe an hour. Maybe less. He ended the call. His chest ached. Not from fear, but from the cruel reality that love had made him vulnerable. Inside the villa, he found Amara in the kitchen preparing dinner. She turned to smile at him, but the look in his eyes froze her mid-motion. Hanul? What's wrong? He walked to her, his voice low but trembling. They found us. Her hands went still, the color draining from her face. Who? The Osaka syndicate. They want me dead. Amara swallowed hard, her voice shaking. Then we leave now. He took her by the shoulders, his eyes dark with conflict. Listen to me. There's no time to run far. I'll deal with them. You take Min and hide in the cellar until I come for you. No, she said firmly, gripping his hand. You can't face them alone. He looked at her, his expression torn between love and fear. I've faced worse. But if anything happens to you, she cut him off, her voice trembling. Then it happens to me too. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching. Don't say that. You're the only good thing left in me. Her tears fell silently. Then come back to me alive. I will, he promised, kissing her deeply, the taste of desperation mingling with love. I swear I will. Minutes later, the storm arrived. The roar of engines echoed in the distance. Black cars snaking up the mountain road. Hanul armed himself, sliding a gun beneath his jacket and another at his belt. His men, hidden in the villa's perimeter, moved into position. Before stepping out, he turned to see Amara clutching Min tightly near the stairs. Their son's eyes were wide with fear. Daddy, Min whispered. Hanul knelt, forcing a calm smile. It's okay, champ. Daddy just needs to talk to some bad people. Min nodded slowly. You'll win, right? Hanul's throat tightened. Always. He kissed the boy's forehead, then looked up at Amara, memorizing her face like it might be the last time. The gunfire started before he reached the gate. Hanul moved like the predator he once was, cold, precise, deadly. Shadows danced under the flare of bullets as he fought through the chaos. Every sound, every shot was for them. But even as he fought, part of him knew love had changed him. He was no longer fighting for power or pride. He was fighting for home, for the woman who had given him back his soul. Inside the villa, Amara held Min close in the cellar. Her heart pounded with every sound above them. The echoes of violence, the crash of glass, the scream of men dying for loyalty. She whispered prayers she hadn't said in years, tears running silently down her cheeks. Then the gunfire stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Amara hesitated for a long moment before opening the cellar door. The house was filled with smoke and broken glass. But when she stepped into the hallway, a familiar figure emerged from the haze. Blood on his sleeve, eyes fierce and alive. Hanul! She cried, rushing to him. He caught her in his arms, holding her tight, trembling. It's over, he whispered. They won't touch you again. She buried her face against his chest, sobbing with relief. You came back. He smiled faintly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I told you I would. Min came running out, arms wide. Daddy! Hanul dropped to his knees and gathered him up, his voice breaking. You're safe, Min. You're both safe. Amara knelt beside them, wrapping her arms around them both. In that shattered villa, surrounded by smoke and ruin, they held each other as though the rest of the world didn't exist. That night, as the fires outside dimmed and the stars returned, Amara found Hanul sitting by the window again, staring into the night. She walked up behind him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. It's over now, she whispered. He took her hand, pressing his lips to her wrist. No, Amara. It's only the beginning. She frowned softly. What do you mean? He turned, his gaze soft but resolute. I've spent my life destroying everything that touched me. I won't let that happen to you. I'm leaving the business. For good. Her eyes widened. You'd give it all up? For you, he said, his hand cupping her cheek. I'd give up the world. Tears glimmered in her eyes as she leaned into his touch. Then let's build a new one. Just ours. And when he kissed her again, slow, deep, and full of quiet promise. It wasn't just a kiss of survival. It was a vow to love her in a world without fear, a vow to live, finally, for something real. Villa had been rebuilt, quietly, beautifully, like a symbol of a new beginning. The empire that once defined Hanul Kim had started to fade behind him. He turned down power, wealth, and the darkness that once ruled him. For the first time in his life, he chose peace. But peace came with something he'd never dared dream of before. Love that lasted. Every morning began the same way now. Amara in the kitchen, humming softly as sunlight danced on her skin. Min laughing outside with the dogs, his joy echoing through the house. And Hanul, standing behind her, arms circling her waist, his voice low against her ear. You're still not used to being watched while you cook, are you? He teased one morning. She turned her head slightly, smiling. Not when the man watching looks at me like that. He smirked. Like what? Like I'm the first and last thing he'll ever love. He brushed a kiss against her neck. Because you are. Her smile faltered for a moment, emotion rising in her chest. You're going to make me cry again. Then cry, he whispered. I'll be right here to wipe every tear. One evening, they took Min to the same beach where they had met years ago, the place where rain once bound their fates together. The waves were calmer now, the sky golden with sunset. Amara laughed as Min ran ahead, splashing through the water. Hanul watched them both, a rare, soft smile on his face. He'd faced death 100 times, but nothing scared him more. Episode 1 ends here. The next episode comes up soon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.